Sarah said, we're talking about trying to find smart moves for big impact. And I hope this is a topic that's going to be relevant for all of us in the webinar. We've got, as Sarah said, a fantastic range of practitioners from a wide variety of different disciplines within L&D, within HR, people, communications. And I think really, but whatever we do, probably for most of us, we are engaged in the business of helping people to use the choices and actions that help them and their organizations to thrive. And that's certainly at the heart of what we're doing at Acteon. So whether that's in onboarding or leadership training or compliance type training, change management, coaching, areas like inclusion and diversity and so on, really whatever we're doing, at the heart of this, we're trying to engage people with choices and actions that help them and their organizations to thrive. But as we know, this can be difficult, and I'm sure that you've all got experience of this, that actually it's quite hard to drive change. It's quite hard to get impact within organizations. And we know that some of this is because of sort of extrinsic factors like infrastructure or budget constraints, time constraints, the kind of competing pressures of the workplace. But some of it, or a lot of it actually, is to do with intrinsic human factors. We're human beings. We're subject to bias and habit. We are subject to peer pressure. We forget things. We can be overconfident. We can be underconfident. It's often quite hard to help humans do the things which will help make them successful, even when they know what those things are, they know how to do them, and even when they're quite well disposed towards doing them. So it's tough to influence behavior and positively influence change in the workplace. But what we found over time is that if we spend time really working out what's happening to humans in the moments that matter at work, those crucial moments of choice and action, quite often that can reveal some simple, powerful changes which can get you the impact that you want. And that's what we're talking about, these smart moves to drive change, and often they can save you time and they can save you money as well. And so that's really what we want to unpack a bit today. But just to highlight that and perhaps demonstrate the kinds of things we're going to be talking about, let's consider a couple of what we might think of as smart moves. So the first one is to do with workplace safety. And in particular, a study that showed how to reduce accidents with cutting injuries for people using heavy cutting machinery. So this is based on some work that was done by Ogilvy's behaviour change unit, and they were trying various interventions to see if ways to reduce accidents for people doing heavy manual tasks, and in particular, in this example, cutting with heavy machinery. And what they found was, when you print the bones of the hand on the back of the glove, it reminds people of the flesh and blood, their flesh and blood inside that glove. Essentially, it increases their sense of vulnerability. And they were able to measure by survey responses people's increasing sense of vulnerability, and actually demonstrate that this led to a reduce in damage or cuts to the hands of the people who were using these gloves. So a really simple, smart move. You can see they're quite common now, these kind of safety gloves, which depict parts of the hand and essentially give you a reminder of what's inside that glove to help you work in greater safety. So that's one example of a very simple, smart move that actually had a measurable impact on safety outcomes. If we take another one, this is something that's really close to home for us. So if we think about things like workplace compliance training, often this is I'm sure many of you will feel and be aware, this is a tough area to get engagement and to get positive change. So often it's the case that the behaviours that people need to use are quite simple, and most people would find them quite easy to do. The problem is it's just not front of mind. People just aren't that interested. And often they just don't think these simple messages of basic workplace compliance really apply to them. So we've worked with a lot of our clients on reframing. So trying to reframe those sort of dull but important messages of compliance in ways that become engaging and actually get people to think about them, bring them to front of mind, and realize that they are just simple things they can do to make the workplace better for them and for their colleagues. One specific example of that was work we did at Channel 4 on their health and safety training, where we reframed the way they presented that. So they had that classic experience that health and safety was just perceived by the office-based workers as something incredibly dull, which isn't really relevant to me. And we helped them use surprise and curiosity and humour by creating a music video based around Barry here, who became the sort of face of health and safety at Channel 4, and a whole campaign based around that, which essentially used humour, used surprise to engage people with basic messages of health and safety. And the crucial thing here was that they didn't spend any more money than they would have done on their sort of conventional training offer. But what they got was measurable impact. They actually, through the various channels they have for measuring people's engagement, like calls to their inquiry line and things like that, they were actually able to show measurable engagement as the result of this relatively simple reframing. And they actually recorded a reduction in workplace accidents in the year after the new approach was launched. So a simple, smart move, reframing a problem that we've used quite a lot to quite powerful effect. So that's a couple of examples. So these are the kind of things that we're going to be talking about. Now, for those of us who, maybe those of you who might have heard us speak about these things before, this is something we talk about quite a lot. But what we hope to be able to do is unpack this a bit today, tell you a little bit more about how we go about trying to find these smart moves and create interventions that deliver greater impact. And we hope we'll do that in a way that reveals that it's relatively straightforward approach, common sense really, no rocket science in here, but something in principle perhaps that you can think about and look to bring to the challenges that you are trying to work on in your work. So we're going to walk you quickly through a 5-step process, discover what's really going on for the humans in the situations that they find themselves in, identify moments that matter, crucial moments that have a big impact on outcomes. Think about how you can shape those to get the outcomes that you need. How do you create an intervention that's going to deliver that engagement, that whatever it is that gets you the outcome you want? And then crucially, how do you sustain that? How do you move beyond the one hit? So we'll walk you through each of these in turn, hopefully show a few examples. We'd love to hear from you and from your experience, and generally in the chat, but there'll be some specific points to do that as well. But to kick us off with discovery, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Rebecca, also a consultant here at Acteon, to talk to us a little bit about how you discover what's really going on.
How do you discover what's really going on? Discovery, it always sounds like quite a big word, doesn't it? But actually, I think most of the time it's having the right conversations with the right people. So what do we mean by discovery? We mean doing the work to find out what is really going on. What are people, what are the humans thinking and doing? And what actually needs to change. And to do this, we kind of work backwards, actually, in that we start with the outcomes. So these are specific things that people need to do or to act on. So do you want to go on a slide? That's it. Yeah. So you can see some examples here. It might be more of something. So it might be more customers joining a loyalty scheme. It might be more colleagues speaking up, more retail workers using their body-worn cameras. It might be less of something. It could be fewer phishing links clicked on. It could be fewer workplace accidents, just like we talked about with the Barry example. But we start by defining outcomes, and then we take a good look at what's going on around those outcomes. And I mean a proper look. If you want to go on a bit, Sarah, thanks. As we said, we've got to start by talking to the people involved. But I think the really important thing about this stage is to make it a safe space. So completely judgment-free, zero blame. You can ask for anonymous contributions to get honest truth from people. You could use a third party. Just make it really easy for people to tell you what's happening around those behaviours. You could also look at the data. What data can you get from the business? Can you spot trends? Are there patterns, particular regions, particular managers where there's a difference? So the key thing is really at this stage is what is happening right now that affects the outcomes that you're focusing on. What behaviours should be happening that aren't, and what is happening that shouldn't be, and why is that? Okay, this is the first question to the room, question in chat. And actually this relates to a real project we worked on with a retail client in the last year or so. And this client had invested amazingly in high-tech security equipment, including body-worn cameras, which you may have seen. And if you go into a shop, they're the camera, you know, the police wear them as well. They're the cameras that they wear on like a lanyard thing around their neck, and it can be switched on if employees were feeling threatened. So, and you've probably seen this in the news, but violence against shop work has been increasing dramatically over recent years. So more shoplifting, abusive behaviour, even robberies. So when the worker's faced with an abusive company, the abusive customer, not company, they can switch the camera on, and then this streams the footage to a security centre. They can then respond, call the police, capture the footage for prosecutions. It's actually a really important part of keeping colleagues safe, and it makes perfect logical sense. But the client found that switching that camera on, that wasn't consistently happening. So I'd just like to ask the room, why do you think that was? It could be anything, and obviously there's lots of reasons that people might not turn it on. So I'm just going to have a look.
Oh, some good answers coming in. This is great. Make sure that you are messaging everyone rather than host and panelists.
Yeah.
So Caroline's saying could be worried that the customer could see them do that and become even more aggressive.
I think that's a really important point.
As Chris says, turns the workers into police-like people. Yep. So you're almost like taking on a role that you didn't sign up for, to kind of to track people.
Well. Yeah. Steph saying worried they forget to turn it off. Yeah, hours of footage.
Yeah. I'm worried about escalating the situation. I think that's absolutely true. It's but you know, that's a very real concern. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, to be honest, there's probably a little bit of all of that, but you know, we know human behaviour is complex, and it could be all kinds of things. Some of them quite predictable, actually. But
forget being an interesting one as well.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But interestingly, did anyone say extra admin? I don't think they did. But interestingly, one of our key findings when we did this bit of discovery work was that staff were reluctant to use the camera because afterwards they had to use quite a complicated back-end system to report the incident. So the rules were every time you switch the camera on, that basically added like 20 minutes to their day. So if you're in a busy store environment, expecting deliveries, lunch rush, or even just want to go home for the night, the extra admin burden, in that moment where you're like, do I switch on the camera? That was in the back of people's minds. So we thought that was you know, it was really interesting. What that did, it enabled the client to think about actually not just the front end and the you know, the psychosocial element of it, but actually the admin of doing having to report and kind of do stuff about it. That definitely affected people's behaviour in the moment. So taking time to work out what's really happening is really critical. It's about understanding people, their environment, motivation, skills and culture. Owen, what comes next?
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, so absolutely. So we talked about that discovery phase. So really getting close to what's happening on the ground. What is really going on for the humans in these moments of choice and action? And within that, and from that discovery, then what we encourage our clients to think about and try to do is identify what we call the moments that matter. These are those, so you know, the outcomes like that. If we take to extend that example really, that we've just been talking about, so kind of shop worker safety in the face of shoplifting, incidents within the stores, aggressive customers, and so on. There are lots and lots of moments of choice and action that affect the outcomes that will happen in that situation. And we covered quite a lot of them. There are all sorts of others, you know, even down to things like how the person is feeling that day when they go into work. But what we find through a really effective discovery process is actually there are some moments that matter more than others for the outcomes that you want. Some not all moments are created equal. And so what we encourage our clients to do, and what we try and do, is focus on moments that matter. Now, and there might be multiple of these. So if we think about that example, you can think about, yes, there's that moment where you have to switch on the body-worn camera. There's a crucial moment that we found as well was the moment when an offender might be trying to leave the store. What do? Do you follow them out, or do you stay in the confines of the store? I think it was Bethan who picked up a key one that also came out as really important, which is the moment when you recognize where the store worker recognizes the customer. Is it someone they know? Often these are local stores. They might know who it is, and the customer knows who they are. So again, how does that affect their choice and action? This is someone that they know outside of the workplace. And then, so what we do is we try to, within these moments, focus on what are the ones where there are actionable changes which could have a significant impact on the outcomes. And just to take another one of those key moments that matter was the one that Rebecca highlighted, the discovery that it was actually taking 20 minutes for shop workers to process the fact that they had turned on the camera was obviously really significant barrier for them doing the outcome that the company wanted them to do, which was turn on the camera and record the incident. So we look for those moments that matter and think, where can we find actionable moments of decision, of choice, of behavior that we can probably influence and we can get a big impact in terms of our outcomes. So we took that example there of shop worker safety. We want to set another little test for it if we can. So let's think about diversity and inclusivity in the workplace. So this is a big deal for most organizations, really. It's a very important requirement, working to create a safe, fair, inclusive workplace. There's huge amounts of choice and action that underpin that, whether an organization has an inclusive workplace or not. So how do you tackle that? What do you do? I mean, you can put out some general messages saying, yeah, you know, we all strive to be inclusive, we want to be fair, but let's think about actionable moments that really make a difference, moments that matter if you want to have an inclusive workplace. So we'd love you to share in chat, maybe some ideas of this. What moments make an inclusive culture? Moments of choice and action. What can people do, and where might we be able to influence some of those? So it might be that someone knows what the speak up number is. It might be that you make sure that you've got a prayer room available and it's unlocked. So I wonder if I could ask you just to share some ideas for moments that matter if you're trying to build an inclusive culture in your organisation.
Yeah, accessibility.
So, yeah, accessibility is a key one. Thinking
really
about
important.
that, the moment when someone comes to the front door of your building and finds they can't actually get in.
Typing into chat.
Here
we
so,
go. A few more.
Okay, visuals. That's really interesting. People being able to relate to visual presentation.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, assisted access, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
listening, I suppose you might put that down to actually listening effectively,
yeah,
which I think is absolutely true.
Asking everyone in the organisation what they need is really crucial. Absolutely. Is there a proactive move to do that?
Yeah.
Elicit opinion and perspective.
Yeah, recruitment, promotion decisions. Yeah. I think that's really important. But there's a lot of moments in that, aren't there? It'd be really interesting to unpick that a bit.
Yeah, as Lou says, of diverse imagery and language in induction, but probably also more broadly than that. Are you seeing images that reflect your own experience and you can relate to?
Yeah, I think Bethan's picked up induction as well, and I think that's probably true. I think we can identify the moment, your first experiences with an organisation. Do they set the tone that then encourages you to behave in those ways? Time and opportunity to share opinions in meetings. So again, what we're seeing is quite rightly a huge range of choice and action and moments that underpin an inclusive culture, and that's absolutely right. All of these things are important. But if we want to drive change and we want to make a significant difference, one way to do that is to look for specific moments that are actionable, where we think we can drive change to build that. So we just wanted to share a couple of moments that have emerged during work that we've done with clients around building an inclusive culture. And here are two that certainly we have found have a very significant impact. So if you think, imagine you're an organization, you're promoting an inclusive culture, you want to be a truly inclusive environment. Imagine the positive impact it would have in your workplace if every colleague, or at least a vast majority of colleagues, could respond positively when they heard or saw inappropriate behavior. And that positive response might be a variety of different things. It might be challenging inappropriate language if that's something they can do. It might be supporting the victim of inappropriate behavior. It might be reporting it through the correct channels, but generally just taking a positive action in that moment. If everybody felt equipped and enabled, empowered to do that, and knew what to do, that would have a fantastically positive impact on creating an inclusive culture. Another one, completely different sort of thing really, is that we've worked with a number of organizations who have found, for all sorts of reasons, it's fairly common that it can be difficult to build a picture of the diversity in the organization. So often colleagues are wary about contributing the sort of information that helps an organization to respond to the people. The classic one is around disability. Often colleagues with disabilities are reluctant to disclose it because they feel it may in some way prejudice them at work. So imagine if you could encourage people, promote the vast majority of individuals within the organization to feel confident, to feel safe, to contribute their personal information, to understand the value of that, to build that more effective picture of the organization. How potentially powerful that would be in support of building an inclusive culture. So these are just two examples of work from our work where we've worked with colleagues, worked with clients in this very broad area of inclusion and diversity, but we've helped them to identify specific actionable moments where they can potentially target an intervention and get a powerful impact. In other words, make a smart move to build towards the outcome that they want. So that's what we mean by identifying the moments that matter. So we work with clients to identify those, to prioritize them, to think about the ones where the greatest impact can be delivered, and then we think about how do we shape those? How can we create the environment, shape the thinking of the people involved so they take the positive choices in the moments that matter? And this is where we lean in a bit to behavioural science. So there's an awful lot of work done in behavioural science looking at what influences people's choice and actions, why do people behave in ways that they do in certain situations. And we've spent quite a lot of time learning about that, understanding it, finding what works, what perhaps doesn't work so well, and come up with a fairly simple approach to think about how we shape behaviour choices in the moments that matter. And essentially, we think of three key drivers, which are basically acting upon an individual at a moment of choice or action. So we think about capability, motivation, and opportunity. So capability is the I know what to do. I know how to do this thing. I know what the action is that is required, and I can complete it. I have that capability. Motivation is that I want to do it. I'm engaged with this. I get it. I understand the value of it, whether that's for me or for my colleagues. I understand the importance of this, and so I want to do it ultimately. And then the third one, crucially, and often the one that is so often overlooked, is opportunity. That means I have the chance to do it. So, if it involves using a piece of kit, the kit is there and it's in working order, so that I can bring my capability and my motivation and actually complete the task. And I think it's really helpful to think about these moments that matter in terms of these drivers that are acting on people's behaviours. And I think one of the reasons, something that we found this as a really powerful insight, is that typically I think we tend as humans to focus on capability. We need to tell people what to do. And if we tell them what to do, then they'll probably do it because they're, sensible people, they'll understand and they'll do it. And so you think so much of workplace L&D focuses on capability, but neglects motivation and opportunity. So we really need to think about all three of them, how the balance of them is playing out and how we can influence them. So let's look at this idea in the context of those smart moves that we shared right at the start. So if we think about the effective ways to build engagement with compliance type behaviors, the reframing of compliance. So the approach we took, the reframing approach using surprise and humor, was because we saw this as a challenge about motivation. So if we look at how what the capability, opportunity, and motivation diagram might look like for compliance type training, we think it probably usually looks something a bit like this. That is to say, capability is usually quite a low requirement. Most of these kind of workplace compliance type things are very simple actions that most people can do almost intuitively. Opportunity, if you think about things like health and safety and so on, is actually low. In fact, we want opportunity to be low. We want these to be things that people don't have to do a lot. Where the challenge lies is with motivation. So these are things that people don't often think are relevant to them, or they think that, you know, that they know it all already, or it's just really dull. They're not motivated. And so our reframing work in these areas is really addressing that gap of motivation. And if we think about the other example that we had there, again, just to think about how these drivers work. So the safety gloves, why does this work? What's this all about in terms of capability, motivation, and opportunity? Well, we think the map of capability, motivation, opportunity would look something a bit more like this. So you're using heavy cutting equipment. You probably have the knowledge and understanding that this is dangerous and I really want to be careful. I don't want to slice off one of my fingers. And you're also highly motivated for that. So probably your motivation and capability are fine and we don't have a problem there. The problem is, as humans, we're distracted, we're forgetful, we make simple mistakes. So what these gloves are doing is they're taking an opportunity to provide you with a constant reminder of the vulnerability of your hands. So a constant reminder to bring that capability and that motivation to look after your hands. So you can see how these smart moves are really influenced by insight into what's really happening in the moments that matter. And they're aiming to shape those moments in terms of capability, motivation, and opportunity to get the positive outcomes that you want. So that's what we mean by shape the moments that matter. So we've discovered what's going on. We've identified moments that matter. We've seen that we can shape them. Now let's design an intervention to do that. So Rebecca, yeah. I'm going to hand back to you.
Just a quick reminder, we've got the Q&A feature on Zoom. Yes. So we've got one question in there already. We're hoping we'll have plenty of time at the end to come and address some questions. So please feel free, if questions are popping into your mind as we go through, type them into there. You should be able to upvote as well if that feature's enabled. So have a go. But otherwise, yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts in there and continue to type into the chat even when we're not specifically asking you a question. It's always good to hear your thoughts as we go.
Yeah.
Over to Rebecca.
Great, yes. So yeah, how do you design a smart move that boosts capability, motivation, or opportunity? Well, when you need to create an intervention, we'd say that a good place to start is by thinking about our behavioural biases. And these biases are human preferences. They're baked in over time. They're our primal instincts, and we all have them. So there's a really useful framework you can use here. It's called EAST. Some of you may have heard us talk about this already. It was devised by the Behavioural Insights Unit, and many of you have heard them and heard of the model already. But basically, it's quite a straightforward way to tap into human biases, and it makes it more likely that us, the humans, will do the action or the behaviour. So humans, we like things to be easy, straightforward, minimal effort. Our brains also like things that are attractive, so engaging or humorous or unexpected. And we're also social creatures, so massively influenced by what we see other people doing. We like to follow the herd, as it were. And also we like things to be presented just when we need them. So we like things that are timely. So the next bit is we're just going to dig into each of those four and think about how creating interventions will help you help you find your smart moves. Okay, easy. So as we said before, easy, it is about reducing friction, reducing hassle, making things really straightforward by simplifying messages. So we work with a care home company. That's the example you can see on the screen. It was a project about emergency procedures. So lots of moments that mattered in that kind of whole project of emergency procedures. But we focused on something that became obvious in discovery was one of the most important actions, and that was close the door if you discover a fire. And this is a moment that matters in care homes, particularly because regulations mean they have protective fire doors in their buildings. And actually the second thing is evacuation of people is incredibly difficult in care homes. So keep calm and close the door. We campaigned on this one action. It was this one thing that had the biggest impact. Keeping calm, close the door if you find the fire. So one message, it's easy to remember. Anyone can do it. Anyone can shut a door. But actually, when that's scaled up, it's the action that has the biggest impact on fire safety and emergency procedures. So that's easy. That's an example of easy. Attractive. So attractive, it's about using the things that as humans we're naturally attracted to. We like fun stuff, we like humor, we like things like music, we like surprise. So we work with a broadcaster. They asked for help with their data protection training, and we used a metaphor: data as a baby that you have to look after and protect. And that, I suppose, it was quite unexpected, different, memorable, and it taps into a very human instinct, I think, to protect something. And it's engaging because, yeah, it's just unexpected, really, data as a baby. Social. So this is about, well, it's about using that kind of herd mentality, driving social norms, building social proof. I see people like me doing this thing, and therefore I'm more likely to do it. So that's about, I suppose, using existing networks, encouraging social groups, social or group commitments as well. So the example you see on the screen, this was a retail transformation program. We use social networks to kind of cascade out a lot of that change messaging. So it felt like home cooked, and it was just a really social program. Really, materials were easy and attractive, but actually they were shared and they were delivered by peer champions in that retail environment. And then finally, timely. So your smart move is most likely to be successful if you think about the right timing. So prompting people to act when they're most receptive. Just-in-time support. You know yourself, you want something that is just there when you need it. You don't want to have to, your brain doesn't like having to store things for a long time, basically. It's just like, tell me now. So timing is also about things like time boxing, so focusing on a specific moment to act. And you remember earlier when we were talking about key moments in promoting diversity and inclusion, one of those moments was providing your diversity data to an organisation, like one wants to do that. So in this example, we helped a retailer get the right focus on this specific action. We helped the client create a kind of diversity declaration day, and that's when all senior leaders were encouraged to fill in the data on that day. So it gave the campaign a focus, it made it social. I think the organisation used Outlook reminders. It was just there, and it led to, I think it was about 15% increase in declarations in 48 hours. And that is a lot. If you work in this space, if you've done anything with diversity and inclusion, you know that it's really hard to get people to do that, but it's a real moment that matters. So EAST, it's a good lens to use when you're creating your intervention, and it prompts smart moves. So I'm going to just hand back to Owen now to talk about how we embed and sustain.
Great. Thank you very much, Rebecca. So we're nearly there. Step 5, sustain. So we've discovered this opportunity for a smart move that we think will really drive impact, and we've made a fantastically exciting and creative intervention that will help do that. And that's fantastic. But we want to do more than that. We want to go beyond that one hit. We want to sustain. And that really comes through a combination of evaluation, of refinement, and adaptation. So I think we're probably all conscious of this. And certainly at Acteon, we know this is often how things work. And we have to be very much focused on this ourselves, which is about the launch of that intervention. We're looking for that, maybe that big bang, that moment to drive impact. This tends to be the way. It's often what the business effectively is judging on. It's the objective. We need this new thing. We need it in place. And that often can take over. But actually, we know that, in fact, what we need to do, if we're really going to get change, is we've got to try to sustain that, to move beyond the one hit. So what we'd like to do for our final sort of chat question moment is just ask, I'm sure that, that many of you in the call today have been involved in thinking about and doing this kind of thing. So what have you done? What have you seen as interventions to try to help sustain change? Things that may have been particularly effective in keeping people engaged with challenges. some of the kinds of principles that can be really effective. It would just be really interesting to see what people have experience of. If maybe you have launched that new learning course intervention, what might you do to try to keep people engaged with what they need to do, or maybe this new knowledge and skills that you're trying to share?
Yeah, what happens after the initial big splash, and you want to keep colleagues engaged. Comms nudges, social proof from Mitcha.
Social proof is a very good one. So that's as Rebecca was just talking about before, the kind of
Mitcha, you're on host and panelist. Please share with everyone.
You with social proofing, that's what Rebecca was just talking about. So something goes live, and you look for colleagues and champions who are talking about it, who are sharing about it, and you use their messaging, their enthusiasm to share it within the organisation.
Definitely, and Tom's point is related to that. Demonstrate and share the impact that it had. So that again is that social proof, and that, as Rebecca was saying in the East model, using examples to show that with other people. Caroline, ask the people we want to influence how it's gone. Absolutely, sharing feedback from colleagues and perspectives of, I guess, senior managers is what you're getting at there. For their perspective, how do they think it's going so far?
It's a good point actually as well about in a way the design of the intervention can help to do this. So I think that Amelia's point there about the nudges on the gloves. So this is in and of itself a sustained intervention. So you could have run posters and safety campaigning about hand safety. Always wear your protective gloves. But by actually putting the nudge or the reminder onto the glove, you are, as it were, sustaining it by default. It's a really good point.
Yeah, there's a lot in there about
champions of good
nudges,
practice,
ongoing, like bite-sized nuggets. Absolutely. And Tom, identify and highlight champions of good practice, definitely. And again, that relates to the social connection and colleagues influencing each other.
And a really good point. Thank you, James, for saying that. Is the crucial thing really is we've got this as step number 5, of course, but actually it's all part of steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 as well.
So true.
We need to be thinking about this from the start as well. So not just designing our brilliant one-hit intervention, thinking, now how do we sustain this, but actually thinking, how do we create sustained change with this smart move?
I love this from Laura, being okay if a few people don't like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've done quite a few brave and bold campaigns in our time, and sometimes people don't like them, and it's okay. And actually, sometimes dislike still works.
Because the conversation is happening.
People remember it.
Absolutely, that is the Marmite effect, isn't it? Absolutely. Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that. Lots of great suggestions. And again, I mean, these are all helpful. These are all useful. We just wanted to share one example here of kind of moving beyond the one here to how we've been working with the clients this year to help them rethink their approach to mandatory training, to move it from the kind of classic one-hit experience to something which has a better chance of sustaining positive behaviours, sustaining change. So if we look at the before situation, so probably a lot of people familiar with this kind of classic mandatory training. So your big one hit, 45 minutes when you join the company, and they had a range of 45-minute e-learning modules covering a whole range of kind of basic mandatory training. 2 years later, you do it again. So it's a 2 hits in this case, or it's a hit every 2 years. And like I guess a lot of organisations, they weren't seeing a great deal of engagement. They weren't seeing a great deal of sort of workplace impact in terms of people using the capability that was being promoted by this learning intervention. So we work with them to change this approach, so we can look at the after approach to something which is designed to create sustained messaging and support, I guess particularly in that kind of awareness and capability area. So the initial e-learning for new joiners is reduced to 15 minutes, just very much focused on key moments that matter in each of these compliance areas. But then after that, they're actually using internal comms channels to deliver bite-sized refreshers throughout the year. So these are really short chunks of refresher learning in a variety of formats. So they have a quiz, they have a kind of scrolling scenario tool, they have a mini movie, they have various different things. And so they're sustaining these messages through the year, moving away from that one hit. But crucially as well, they're evaluating each of the bite-sized chunks in terms of what sort of engagement did they get, what sort of response do they get to it. And this is allowing them to modify and design new bite-sized chunks. So they're responding to what they're finding out, and they're adapting and refining to really try to hone these interventions to make them as engaging, as impactful as possible. There's just one quite simple example of from a piece of work that we've done about thinking about sustain and how you can keep those smart moves going to continue to drive impact. Great. So that's the process. So far, the 5-step process that we use, that crucial phase of discovery. What's happening for the human beings in these situations? What's really happening? What's really going on? You may reveal something really surprising that gives you a powerful way in, like the admin example we used in the safer stores. Identify those moments that matter. Where can we get that greatest impact? So in diversity and inclusion, is it about we could get a fantastic impact if we could just empower people to have the confidence to make a really positive response when they hear or see inappropriate behaviour? We can think about how to shape those in terms of capability, motivation, and opportunity. And that might help us find a really smart move to get big change in a very efficient and cost-effective manner. We can think about how we create that intervention, again, to recognize the instincts and the biases and the habits of the humans that we're trying to influence. And then we think about sustaining that so we get sustained impact. So that's our approach to creating smart moves to deliver big impact. Thank you so much for the fantastic contributions. You know, I think we've got a very informed audience today, which is great, and we know that a lot of you will have experience here, but it would be really nice if we've had at least two excellent questions that I think it would be really good for us to pick up. So
yeah, please do jump into the Q&A and vote or ask things that are top of your mind.
And also, I suppose, you know, feel free to offer your responses to these questions. So let's talk about, so is there always a moment? What happens when the business needs you to deliver training, but you can't identify a specific moment? And I think that is a great question and really, really relevant. And it makes a really important point. It's absolutely right. And I would, so we would always use this kind of approach flexibly and not absolutely rigidly. So the compliance example actually is a really good one of these, where you know, there could be lots of moments where a particular choice of action is really important. It might be quite hard. And in fact, you know, trying to identify moments that matter and prioritize them might not be as relevant in that case. However, what we've tried to do in those cases, we think about, as it were, common behaviors that you can influence, which would be powerful in a huge range of different moments. So an example of that would be work we did at Channel 4 a few years ago now. They were introducing a new code of conduct. Again, this is quite a common thing, I guess. Many organizations face this challenge. Code of conduct that covered things like, you know, gifts and hospitality, managing your expenses, conflicts of interest, all those sort of common kind of conduct areas of challenge. And you'd be right to say, yeah, you know, you would find an awful lot of different moments across all of that. So the approach we took in that case was to, as it were, define a moment as that moment of questioning where I think, oh, is this something I should think about? I'm about to spend some money on behalf of the company. I'm about to make a choice on behalf of the company. So that was the moment. So that might generalize in many, many different situations, but we focused on that moment. And we encouraged Channel 4 to think of this in terms of promoting a single question, which was to say, is it okay? So if you're in a moment like that, a slight moment of dilemma, you know, should I spend this money? Is it okay to put this on expenses? Can I receive that gift? Just take a moment and think, is it okay? And then we use a series of other questions to decide whether you think it is okay or not, and refer to the code of conduct. So that was a way of taking a huge range of possible different moments that matter, but condensing them to a single actionable moment and trying to influence that. So I hope that's a kind of answer to that sort of approach.
We've got an upvoted question. Have you got an example of one that's mainly about capability?
We've probably got lots of examples of one that's mainly about capability, but I suppose I think capability, a lot of what we do for clients now around capability is in the world of performance support. So often it's kind of toolkit items. It's if you've got a moment, during discovery, things crop up, like there might be a moment in safeguarding where someone discloses something, and actually the capability is how you respond to that moment. So I think it's that it's just giving people resources that help them know what to do in a specific moment. So it is often handled in a kind of performance support resources kind of way, I think, but it's the ability to practice that in that moment as well, which is important.
I think so. And if it's okay to share one very specific one, actually, which I think is a really good example of discovery and focus on capability and motivation and opportunity, revealing a really powerful insight. And I think quite a few people on the call will have heard us talk before about this example, which is when we helped Co-op to implement Smart Cash in their workplace. So this was a new model for cash handling. It was a piece of kit that people had to use at the checkouts to bank notes. And without going into lots and lots of detail, discovery revealed that actually it was a capability issue. But what was really, I think, the really important discovery, that it wasn't so much a capability, but the challenge was learning to do the new behavior. The challenge was unlearning the old habits of years and years and years of handling notes in one particular way. And so it was a matter of in a way, changing the capability, moving the capability to a very embedded habit to use something different. And that insight actually really helped us target that behavior in particular with a very creative solution, if I may say, that Rebecca created. And actually that we got really powerful output from that as well. So I hope that's an example of a capability-based issue.
Just a minute or two. We've got time for one more question, which will be our upvoted one from James. Hello, James. Which is a really interesting point, how to discover what's really going on, which is hard enough anyway, in a multi-site environment where different things may be going on at different sites. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's the perennial challenge, isn't it? Because you do in discovery, you have to, I think, accept that because humans are complicated and because we all respond in different ways, depending on what it's like in this environment, a workplace environment, like a warehouse is very different to a store. So I think you have to try and be as granular as the moment needs to be. So I think you need to be prepared to think about what's the top level messaging and that you can use across the board, but creating something that can be tailored for different groups of people who need to do different things at different times. So I think it's just having the appetite to do that.
I think that's a good point, actually. I think it's flexibility in the solution. So quite a lot of, we are often working across multi-site organizations and things. So building flexibility into the solutions. But just on a couple of really practical responses to that question, James, is certainly, I think, a bit of legwork. I mean, we quite where we're working with multi-site organizations, we do, if we're involved directly in the discovery phase, we are trying to get out to different places and really see what is happening in those different places. The other really practical one that we used actually in a project quite a long time ago now, that was really, really powerful, where we were, again, aggregating across an organization with hundreds of different sites, some of them doing quite different things, was we actually got some key champions within our target audience to keep diaries of their sort of daily actions. This was to do with kind of embedding best practice. And we actually got a whole cohort of people across a wide range of sites just to keep activity diaries for 2 weeks. And obviously we provided some guidance to that, and there was structure in the diaries, but that was actually an incredibly powerful tool for revealing what people were actually doing across a wide range of sites. So that's just one kind of practical tool there.
Well, and one that just on that multi-site environment, it's a real opportunity as well to do some testing of things. So, you know, just think about what you might come up with a solution, or you might come up with a couple of ideas, but a crucial part of this is being able to pilot and test. I think someone put it in the chat earlier, being able to test, is this having an impact? Actually, is this a smart move? Is it working as you intended? So if, you know, with those multi-site environments, it presents a little bit of complexity, but it also presents amazing opportunities.
Brilliant. Thank you. So, thank you both. Interestingly, the eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed that we actually advertised 6 steps for this webinar, and we've only used 5. We have a 5-step approach for this, and step 6, if we're going to make a step 6, is making it work for you. So taking those practical steps, the discover, identify, shape, create, and sustain, and really thinking about what does that mean for you? What does that look like in your organisation? How will you apply it for your own big projects, your own strategies, your own priorities? I mean, it's good to get started, maybe try some little experiments, test some approaches out, gather some evidence, but we do appreciate as well it can be difficult to do it, and there may be some specific organisational challenges, no doubt there are, that you each face. On that, we are very happy to spend a bit of time with you, helping you think this through. We offer a free hour of consultancy with a couple of our experienced team to help you unpick a project and think about how you might approach it. Absolutely no commitment attached to that, but we actually, as you might be able to tell, love chewing over knotty issues and problems, and we're really happy to jump on a call with you and help you think about that. So if that's something that would be helpful to you, my contact details are at the bottom of the screen. I pick up that hello@acteoncommunication.com, and my own email is at the bottom there. So I'd just like to finish by saying a huge thank you to everyone who's come today, and for all your contributions in the chat. There's been some really good comments and good thoughts, some fantastic questions in Q&A. Thank you for that. Thank you for your time. We love engaging with such a fantastic and diverse network, so thank you for being part of it. Thank you to Owen and Rebecca for all your insights and examples. I think, well, I'm biased obviously, but I think it's really interesting and I never bore of hearing of it. So thanks everybody for joining us. We'd always love to hear how you get on with your own smart moves. So thank you and have a good day.
Thanks everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.